That's not good news.
Horrors, There's 116 overs.
Sorry?
They scored 116 overs, 16 overs. Australia.
116
runs.
In 16 overs, they scored 100 runs.
Oh, wow.
Over 600 over.
But that's 16. It's not so bad. It's not so good also.
All the
It's not so good. 16
It's
overs,
terrible.
100 is...
600 over, sir.
Oh, it's not a
16th
T20.
over, they were 100 runs.
Yeah, it's not T20.
Now it is 24 overs and it is 148.
Wow.
Oh, one. So we are ready to go when Mr. Harish Kapadia comes online, sir. He's already there.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, he's coming in. Ravi, you're ready for the YouTube?
Yeah, it's streaming.
Yeah. We are already live on YouTube just now. Right. So, Mr. Harish Kapadia is online. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
You can hear me well?
Morning. Yes, morning, Mr. Harish Kapadia.
Morning, sir. How are you? Yes.
We are fine. And how are you?
Very well.
You're speaking from Bombay.
I'm speaking from Bombay.
Right.
This is really a global village.
very much.
Whole India.
Global village. Yes.
Yeah.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my honor and privilege to welcome Mr. Harish Kapadia. We were introduced, as I mentioned earlier, by Mrs. Sheila Jaivan, and I contacted Mr. Kapadia, and flash came the reply, yes, tell me the date and time, and how many are going to hear me. So that was the kind of positive response that we got from Mr. Kapadia. Then I did a lot of homework before I called him, of course. I did a lot of homework. There is no award in mountaineering that he has not received in the international fora. He's written so many books. He's been trekking for almost 40 years, and there is so much he needs. He's going to share with us his experiences. So when we were discussing with him as to what he could speak on, then we found that he's written about the Siachen Glacier and how it can be, what the future could be of the glacier. So I said, since we are veterans and most of you would have served on the glacier, we proposed that he speaks more about the glacier. So that's what he's going to talk about today. Sir, it's an honor. You're welcome. I hand you over to our secretary, Wing Commander Harshavardhan, who will introduce you.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Kapadia. Welcome
Good morning.
to this talk show. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We present the 19th talk show on our Reconnect series of the AFUA, and it's once again my proud privilege to welcome Mr. Harish Kapadia. Before I hand over to Mr. Kapadia, I would like to make a small introduction about him. While to describe Mr. Harish Kapadia, I can just say it in 3 words. He's a mountaineer, explorer, and author. In his initial days, Mr. Kapadia began climbing and trekking in the ranges around Mumbai, the Western Ghats. His first visit to the Himalayas was almost 50 years ago, and he has never looked back since then, and still continues to trek and climb actively. His main contribution to the Himalayan climbing has been to explore unknown areas and in a number of cases to open up climbing possibilities. He has personally climbed more than 30 Himalayan peaks, many of them first ascents. Moreover, he has crossed more than 150 Himalayan passes to explore different valleys. As an expedition leader, he has initiated a series of joint expeditions with climbers from United Kingdom, France, Japan, and the United States to explore and climb throughout the Indian Himalaya. The quality of exploration and the full and detailed report that he has issued has provided superb ground information about these areas. He is a selfless mountain lover who undertook everything simply for the love of it and not for fame or money. He managed all this while he was a businessman. but mountains and exploration came first, even ahead of business. When the need was felt, he sold his successful family enterprise to devote all his time to his first love, the mountains. He continued his passion. He continued his passion despite two serious personal injuries and a major setback in the family. As the editor of the Himalayan Journal, he has made a unique contribution to our knowledge of Himalayas. He has authored 17 books till date and penned several articles in which he has recorded his exploratory activities in the Himalayan ranges. Harish is a tireless campaigner for the resolution of the Kashmir conflict through the Siachen Peace Park initiative in the Karakoram Range. Mr. Harish Kapadia is an honorary member of several reading alpine clubs, London, Japan, American, and Polish. He was vice president of the Indian Mountaineering Academy from 1997 to 1999 and was awarded the IMF Gold Medal in 1993. It is most befitting that in the year 2003, in which the 50th anniversary of the first ascent of Everest was celebrated, Mr. Harish Kapadia was honored with the Patrons Medal by the Royal Geographical Society for contribution to the geographical discovery and mountaineering in the Himalaya. He was the first Indian to receive this award after 125 years. The President of India honored him with the prestigious Tenzing Norgay National Adventure Award in 2003 for lifetime achievements, the highest adventure award in India. He has also received the King Albert Gold Medal, Switzerland, and the George Lyon Medal, Ireland. In 2017, he was awarded the Pilots d'Or-Asia 2017 UIAAA. This is considered to be the Oscar Award of mountaineering. His son, Lieutenant Nawang Kapadia, was commissioned on 2nd September 2000 in the 4th Battalion of the 3rd Gurkha Rifles, Indian Army. In less than 3 months after his commissioning on 11th November 2000, Lieutenant Nawang Kapadia made the supreme sacrifice while gallantly fighting the Pakistani-based terrorists in the jungles of Rajwar in Kupwara district. Since then, Mr. Harish Kapadia has taken to lecturing about this conflict, particularly in the Siachen Glacier. He has been discussing a proposal for a peace park for Siachen and cleaning up the environmental damages here in the memory of Sun. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's the small intro about Mr. Harish Kapadia. I'm sure he's got lots and lots of things to share with us today. So, sir, with that, I hand over to you, sir.
Right, sir. Thank you very much. And thank you for this good introduction. I think you'll have to highlight me. I'm just now on the side. You have to bring me to the center screen.
Yeah, we will give you the speaker to you, sir.
Yeah, okay.
It doesn't speak of you now, Harsha.
Yeah. As you speak, you will come in the middle, sir.
Okay. So, very happy to speak to such an elite gathering, and I'm sure you know quite a lot about the subject, Himalaya, and is, favoring more than me. So, what I would talk is today is about the Siachen Glacier and completely the area of Eastern Karakoram, that is the northernmost point of Kashmir. And I've been several times there, almost 9 trips to that area, starting from 1985, when the Siachen conflict started. As a result, one has gathered a lot of information and everything about that area, and which I'm very happy to share with you. And as the period coincided with the Indian landing on the glacier and the fights, so a lot of army and even air force are being involved in this whole episodes. Now, first of all, when I talk of the Siachen Glacier, people ask two things, civilians, of course, that why Siachen is so important to India. That both countries are fighting over it. It's a piece of barren land, and why everybody is running around. The reason for that lies in the history and the involvement of everything which is happening there, and why it is geographically so important, with one side Pakistan and the other side China. In fact, today this happening in Galwan Valley would have been too serious if India was not holding Siachen, and everything could have gone lots of wrong. On the other side, people ask what we mountaineers are doing on the Siachen, particularly, of course, climbing mountains and going, but where the artillery fires are exchanged and helicopters are flying. But that also the reason is in the history of the Siachen, which I will be, of course, narrate. But the main thing is the nation which does not understand its geography, does not understand its geography, is condemned by history.
And if you want to stop your video, you can do that too.
I'm on mute.
No. I'm muted.
Harish sir, kindly unmute yourself.
Yeah, but I'm not in the center screen because I'll be now showing my pictures. So until I'm on the main screen, the pictures won't come. Just now I can see you, Wing Commander.
Harsha, you make him the host, please.
I'll do that, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are the host now, sir.
No, but I'm not on the screen. I don't know why.
Sir, when you're speaking, we can get to see you on the center of the screen, sir.
Okay, but I'm just hearing the name Ravi Shankar, and I don't see myself.
Harsha, can you see Mr. Harish Kapadia on the main screen?
Ravi, I can see him on the center of the screen whenever he's speaking. So I think the speaker's view is already there whenever
Yes,
he's
sir.
speaking.
Yes, sir. Mr. Kapadia, sir, we are able to see you on the center of the screen, all right, sir.
No, but unfortunately, I am not seeing myself in a full thing because I'll be sharing screen. So hopefully you'll see the pictures then.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, that's it.
So even in YouTube, I can get to see you in the main screen, sir.
All right, so that means something is wrong. I mean, I may not be able to see myself full screen. So anyway, again back to Siachen, because they say that the nation which does not understand its geography is condemned by history. And that's what we have suffered in the past at different places. And in Siachen, we had to sort of take a stand and fight. And that's glad we did. And this is the sort of story of, Siachen, as I would now narrate with my pictures. And you can see the pictures now?
It is coming up. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's good then. So, yeah, okay. So, this is the story of going to Siachen and in different aspects of it. It is called the Battle of Roses because by a legend, Siachen is called the Glacier of Rose because of there are wild roses grown to the glacier, which is a very unique thing of the nature. Now, as you may, I'm sure, know, on the northernmost part of India, northernmost point of, in fact, Kashmir, is the Siachen Glacier. One side is Aksai Chin, the other side is POK, and this is a kind of the wedge in between. And hence it becomes important that if we don't hold this, our two enemies would be sort of having a common ground on land. And now it has become more important because of this China and the Galwan Valley episode, because the Chinese came down from the side to enter towards the Siachen Glacier. In fact, they are in the Siachen Valley and just about one pass away. And that's why this is important to defend everything. We first went to Siachen in 1980, before the war started, and this is the deserted streets of Leh. Now you will find it full of tourists. And the ridge behind, the snow ridge behind, is the range from where Karakoram begins. It is crossed by pass called Khardungla, and that is known to be the highest motorable road in the world. And I've been sitting here since 1980, all different points. And if you look here, the whole range from Khardungla Pass, the straight route which goes is the Siachen Glacier, with passes on the left and the right. While a valley branches off, the main trade route goes across Sasirla to Karakoram Pass, which is a traditionally historic route which has been followed for many years. In fact, centuries almost. So you start with going across the Khardungla, and in our times the roads were very bad. You find everything completely broken, and even the trucks needed with the diesel needed a little bit of fire push inside to warm up the diesel, so then only they can start. And this was in October, so you can imagine what happens later on. And down in the valley, you will find many monuments like this. This is a monument to martyrs in Kashmir, or a war which has happened in Nubra Valley. Now, this is what the Valley of Kashmir, and after 1947, when the ceasefire was declared, or line of control, this is the line of control which goes around and then taking east and going up to here to the Siachen Glacier. And it stopped at border point called NJ 9842, and beyond that it is the Karakoram Pass. The right side is Aksai Chin, and this is Karlu and entire POK. So it's a very sensitively situated area and very much linked with completely the Kashmir episodes and Kashmir problems. Now the trail going towards the Karakoram Pass, the historic century-old trail, starts from here and it goes via high peak called Aktash, and trade is difficult even still. So I wonder how these Yarkandis who came down from there with minimum of gear, how they crossed all these problems. And in 1830s, General Joravar Singh of the Kashmir Maharaja, or Jammu Maharaja to be precise, led an army, and one of his several episodes attacks onto the Ladakh. And he went along this whole trail and going almost till Karakoram Pass, and he came back from there and went to Tibet, where he was killed. So the area always belongs to the Jammu and Kashmir Empire. There is no ever question of anybody else occupying or in control of this area. Now, this is the feel of the entire Siak Valley when there is no water. Otherwise, this can get filled with water. And it's completely barren, full of stones, and walking is quite troublesome. And because the wavy nature of the Siak River, the river of death as it is called, you have to cross rivers several times. In fact, going from Leh till the pass from Karakoram Pass, you have to cross almost 30 times as we counted. And it is a very kind of forceful river. So you can do it only when it is little down. And after about June, it becomes unfordable till about September. So that's why the new road had to be built, which army has done, and which became the bone of contention with the Chinese near the Kalwan Valley. But for mules, there are no such inhibitors. They exactly know from where to cross. In fact, if you're riding a mule, he will not go in until he knows it is a very safe and nice area to cross. However, you will beat him up. So animal has got instinct to how to play safe and how to play nice. And that's why these kings of Karakoram, as we call the mules, are absolutely, our members get very fida on him, and they got a little lovely kiss for this mule. And even the muleteers themselves, they really look after the mule and absolutely they cherish them. Now here, this is the map of the eastern side of Ladakh, where you see the Aksai Chin area, which has been occupied by China after the 1962 war, and they built the road along with. But then there is a little bifurcation which is going in here, one of the small valley, which is the Galwan Valley, and then it meets the Siak River at this point. And because we built a road through here, that is what the Chinese were excited about or angered about. And the whole episode of the whole Galwan attack recently, it started. And this was the valley which was very, very, let's say, in news all the time. And it is a rare valley which has been named after a local explorer, Ladakhi explorer called Ghulam Rasool Galwan. And the valley is named after Galwan, not one of the explorers or any other things, but a muleteer who led one of the British district commissioner into the valley and introduced him to how the valley will lead to the Aksai Chin. And so it is a very great honor for him to be, having this valley with him. And this valley also had, entrance you could see it's completely rocky and nothing inside. And Indian Army during the 1962, the forward policy decided to make a post at the head of Galwan Valley that is overlooking Aksai Chin. And that was not appreciated by Chinese. And you could have many movies also made. The Chinese surrounded it and they're shouting on a microphone, Hamara land hai, chale jao, chale jao. That was in the movie Hakikat. And that's quite a true story. And when the 62 war started, one of the first things Chinese did was to wipe out the Galwan post. to loss of life to India, along with some posts in Arunachal. But they always took this as a very serious approach to Ladakh and very careful in providing it. And this was a trade, this was the route of Mongolian invasion also. Genghis Khan were to come down this route, and the Ladakhi kings, that's why I built this fort, now of course in ruin, called Yurgolak Fort. And this Yurgolak Fort guarded the entrance to the Nubra Valley, which is very fertile and leads to another pass. So the Ladakhi kings also knew the Galwan Valley and the passage from Galwan, and they protected it thoroughly. So it has always been a very important event. And ahead of Galwan, you continue going the mule trails because it goes, about more than 20-25 kilometers per day, mules. So almost everybody rides. Even the trekkers also find it very difficult to trek so long. And the halts are dictated by the mules, how much they can cover, where is the water available, where is grass available. So there is no way you can, do anything else. And the mules also have this horseshoe changing almost every second, third day. And the whole caravans which will come from Central Asia carrying goods and away knowledge were always finding it very difficult because when there were no horseshoe developed, and the mules' legs used to get damaged, and almost you start with 100 mules and only 30-40 will reach. Rest can get damaged. So once this development of horseshoe was done and fixed into the bottom of a leg of a horse, lot of goods, that is riches and knowledge India, and that's why this horseshoe is considered lucky. And many Indian households, particularly here in our west, I don't know in south and north, they hammer it on the door so as a sign of good luck. And the horseshoe, old horseshoe are definitely in demand. The mules go on, you start early morning, 8 o'clock, the whole caravan starts and it walks in a very quiet rhythm. And there is nothing you can do without a muletaire. You go right, left, they won't listen to you. You absolutely follow everybody together and very well disciplined till the next camp. When they start coming, they start going a little faster. Some of the army camps have this airdrops. So here you'll find a canister. They are sort of declaring that come, and one horse, one aeroplane came down and looked back. And of course, it dropped many parachutes. And some of the parachutes, when they don't open, the kerosene jerry cans or something, they almost drop like a bomb. So the horses have also sense for that, and they definitely keep away from it. There are important points because the water is scarce in this barren Ladakh because the river water is almost undrinkable. It's full of mud and sand. So this is called Sultan Chushku. Chushku in the Balti is a river or a small little rivulet, and that is where all the people would stay. And as you reach towards the top, there is a Depsang Plateau. It is a vast plateau about 18 kilometers long and almost equally wide. And it's reddish in color. That's why I call Depsang. And originally, this was, all the skeleton trails, the mules that had died, just to put bones all along. So in snow, you can find the trail. Otherwise, it's difficult. And now, of course, there is a small road built and a small vehicle have been dropped by Air Force. And as a result, they put a lot of jerry cans, and it is called a jerry can trail. And in the middle of the whole plateau, there is a camp called Trek Junction. Now, one does not know right side where is Chinese border or left side what is what. And this between the small little camp, the borders of two nations, India and China, are being controlled. And on the right side, if you go a little bit, I don't know how much, and they also don't know exactly, there's nothing is demarcated where the Chinese are situated. And little ahead is the Depsang Plateau or DBO, the Daulat Beg Oldie, which is now become very famous. And since the Indian Air Force landed up flights here, a proper functioning airport, things have improved quite a lot. And when we went, it was completely, about 1 Paltan of army maybe sitting there. But now I believe there is lots and lots of army, and we have to really fight. And on the right hand side, you all these humps and you see are almost going toward the Chinese territory. And again, as I said, how far they are, we don't know. There is a river called Chip Chap River or Chup Chap River, as we might in Hindi may call it. And it's really a very funny river because it doesn't make any noise. And there is a sandy bank below. That's why it doesn't make a noise. And all the vehicles, they get stuck in this river. And beyond this, developed like only 2 kilometers away, there is a place called the Polu shelters. This leads to things you see in the behind. These are made of stone by the Yarkandi travelers. And in this barren Karakorams, when there is strong breeze, they would take shelter inside and almost spend the night sitting. And these are one of the small little hills, which are very rare here, are protects them. And in the front, there is a little tablet for explorer 19 who came here in 1935, a PHC Visser of Netherlands, and it is there for his memory. And we also added a small tablet for them, unfortunately for our friend Kaiwan Mistry, and that was he died in an drowning in the shore. The river lived up to his name, absolutely, like the river of death. Beyond this, you arrive towards the Karakoram Pass, again flat plateau, and almost you can walk. And this snowy peak you see on the right side, the Karakoram Pass at the bottom of it. And the pass itself has got nothing, almost no views, no structure except this old bone structure which has been put up as a demarcation from both sides. And all the mules, bones of the mules can sort of mark this out. Now there are roads from both sides, and the Chinese also will come down looking around the pass. And this is the whole valley looking toward the Chinese. And down below is a major camping ground. And in fact, this pass was originally used by the Central Asia Trading Company, like our East India Trading Company in India. Our Robert Shaw, one of the famous lords of England, he formed a company to trade with Yarkand and other areas. And regularly major caravans were sent through this place. And one of his caravaneer, Andre Dad. So that Andre Dad was completely murdered here, sitting here by one prisoner called Dawood Khan. The Chinese came down and arrested him and took him to Yarkand jail. And the British always wanted to, get this prisoner, but Chinese won't hand him over, and ultimately died in Chinese prison. It seems they may have killed him because it would look very bad from a Yarkand, a British officer leading a Dawood Khan, a strong Muslim, handcuffed back to India. So before that, all these Andrade's bones can get mingled with the bones of mules. British collected them and they buried them in Leh cemetery. If you ever in Leh, this is strongly, it's a very old, ancient cemetery where there is a graves of many famous persons, including Andrade. And there is a big tower erected in the sanctuary for Ferdinand Stoliska. He was a Polish who made complete natural history of this area. And in fact, a bush jet has been named after him as Stoliska's bush jet. Our officers who came with us left a little gift for the Chinese, and they said this will be picked up by the Chinese, and then they will leave some other gifts here, which we will pick it up. So basically, by this, they sort of acknowledge presence of each other. But on the plateau, you will find many graves of soldiers killed in 1962 and buried here. And it was a tragic thing when a lot of people were killed on the Depsang Plateau. They were wiped out, they came down. And Indian Army had orders to stay here, stay put here, which was absolutely almost undefensible area. And they were constantly saying, if we can go down a bit, there is a river enters a gorge. So we should withdraw and stay on that gorge. And then they said, even almost we would have killed Chinese by throwing stones from above. But unfortunately, that was not agreed to by the political bosses. And they all stayed here. And as a result, we have loss of many people. Now we returned back to DBO and climbed towards a pass called Col Italia. The Italians' expedition in 1930 was trapped on the Siachen Glacier. And using their ingenuity, they crossed over this high snow pass to Depsang line and then followed the Central Asia trade route. And they humbly mentioned that they will dedicate this pass to memory of the great Italian explorers, and they called it Col Italia, which is name is stuck. And from here, you can look down to another unique feature or toward the Siachen side called the Teram Shahar Plateau. Now, this is also unique, another about 20-25 kilometers long on an average height of 18,000 feet, which is never in the history in India, I mean in the world, mountains, you will find such a big plateau at such a big height, because of course this height is higher than the highest peak in Alps. So this is a plateau you keep on walking, and there are many side branches, and the mountains are just about 2 to 3,000 feet higher from the plateau. But it's a unique plateau, and we luckily could explore this first time in 2002, and it was absolutely mind-boggling, going different camps and reaching almost nowhere. We climbed a small peak, not small but high peak of 7,000 meters with the Japanese, and the Japanese summit on the top with the picture of my son, which was dedicated him. And then as you enter towards the Siachen side, there are broken glaciers and very troublesome walking. Now, valley to the west is, of course, the Siachen Valley or the Nubra Valley, and Siachen Glacier snout begins from about 12,000 feet, and it is entire river is gushing out from this glacier. But of course, now glacier is breaking, and water is more, and it's a little tragic thing to see this whole big glacier with the gaps in between the big holes. Now, one of the specialities is that in Siachen Glacier, there are many wild roses grow, and they grow anywhere about it. This is all about 12,000, 15,000, anywhere on the rock cracks or anywhere. And it is a pretty unique feature. Now, one explorer, Bullock Workman from America, she collected a story from the Baltis, from where she came towards in the Pakistan side. And it appears that the Central Asian traders used to come down to Siachen Glacier and camp at the corner, and where the Baltis would come and trade goods with them. And this was going on for many decades. So once they invited Baltis to their village for a little feast. And Baltis were entrapped by the beauty, the Central Asian traders were entrapped by the beauty of a Balti girl, and they kidnapped her and ran away towards Central Asia. This enraged the Baltis, but there is almost nothing they could do. So they went to their famous Lama in the area, and Lama gave him a taviz, which is generally maybe given for good luck, but here it was given to bring storm and bad luck. And Lama said, you put it on the Bilafundla Pass, which is between Siachen and Baltistan, and don't return by the same way. Just come down the glacier and turn. It will be a long walk around. So Baltis got a little tired, and they did not obey Lama's instruction, priest's impression to the full, and left the taviz at Bilafundla, but came down the same way. After one day, this taviz brought heavy snowfall that blocked all the roads. Central Asians could never come, and the Siachen Glacier became completely barren, and nothing sort of grew there now. Everything is gone. But because the instructions of the Amir was not followed to the top in the totality, the storm could not destroy the roses. And these wild roses grow everywhere on along the Siachen, and that gave the name to the glacier, the place of roses, Siachen. And that is where this is the Baltis below. You find many inscriptions like this at different places. And on the side of the glaciers also you'll find the roses growing, and reminds you of this, prediction of the Amir for this whole destruction. Now, Siachen, contrary to our belief, has been in use and explored for many years. So in 1880, Sir Francis Younghusband was deputed by the British governor to find out a route through Siachen or through Karakoram, because it was always feared that the Russians might come down to India for warm waters of Arabian Sea. And he was to explore different passes coming down to India. And he went with a very simple way, and he had engaged a famous guide called Turdi Kol. Here you see in the front, and you could see their equipment was very preliminary. And this is in 1887 that they are crossing the Mushtaq Pass, which even today is quite a challenge for even mountaineers to cross. In the second part of the journey, he come down up the Urdog Glacier. And this Urdog Glacier from Central Asia and Shaksgam Valley comes down to the foot of Siachen Glacier or Indira Col, the northernmost point of the Siachen Glacier. And he came down here and went to the left. He could feel sense of a huge glacier. His explorer instinct told him there is something big and large behind this. But he had no time to do this, so he went to the left and ultimately stood at the foot of Turkistan, which is also easy pass leading into the Siachen. But he could not explore anything more because of the time constraint and the distances involved from different places. So this is the satellite map of the Siachen Glacier. This worm going in the center is, entire Siachen Glacier. This side is the Pakistani and war side, Saltoro Ridge, as they call it. And this is the eastern side, and this is going up to the Karakoram Pass. And the Teram Shahar Glacier is here. And then ultimately we'll have Indira Col, which is at the top of it. And there are several side valleys. And one of the major side valleys, Terong Valley, which goes toward north and south, and which also is a very important point in Siachen Glacier. Then after Young Husband, he shared his all findings, they explored with another doctor, Tom Longstaff, a British doctor, who was more of an explorer than a doctor. And he came here, and he also was following the Young Husband's guidelines and going. First, he came from what is now today's Pakistan side and looked at the Bilafund La here in the center. And this is the high pass and easy route inside. Today, this picture won't be possible because, this is the high Bana post from where India would be observing them. And this is the Pakistan area, and it's a major area of war. But he reached Bilafund La. And from there, he saw several high peaks of the Siachen Glacier, like this Junction Peak and Teram Shahar and everything. And he remembered what Young Husband had said. Bilafund La, originally it was believed to be the beginning of Siachen Glacier. But Young Husband said the Siachen Glacier extends right till Indira Col, where he would come to the foot of it. So he decided to withdraw from here, take a turn, and come up the Siachen Glacier from its snout and trying to reach here. And he came down this, and he again saw the high peaks, same peaks of Siachen Glacier. And so he concluded the Siachen Glacier here is still going ahead. And this is the kind of a Teram Shahar Glacier. And Siachen Glacier is very, very long. And he wrote that the Young Husband was the true prophet. And what he imagined was turned out to be explorer's instinct, come out to be correct. And by this exploration and documentation of Young Husband, the British Empire had stolen almost 650 kilometers of an area and added to its own empire from the Chinese. And that was also sometimes like an idiot. It has been frowned upon by the opposite party when they negotiate, because this was belonged to the Chinese. 2 years after the Longstaff came a unique couple, bullock workmen and hunter bullock workmen. And they were both couples who were cyclists, very rich couple from America. And they would cycle all over India, including south and north and everything. In fact, the southern areas were they're popular. But when in June, things will become very hot in the Indian plains. So they would come up to Kashmir and explore the different valleys of the Karakorams. And they had a Parsi agent called Bairamji, who looked after all their needs. And porters, because they have more than 400 porters were required. They were not easy travelers. You will send pictures of sitting them on a table and eating breakfast and a pakka dress and everything. And they brought 2 guides from Alps, which also looked after them. But this lady was also a fighter for, women's right. In America, women were not allowed to vote till many, many late days. So she sort of always, carried these votes for women posters. And in every point in Siachen that she reached, she always put these posters there. But of course, that began in 1912. We don't hope to find any of those posters. But she always also was trekking in a pakka way, in a completely, dress and topi and skirt and long ice axes and in style. She climbed different points, including the Junction Peak, and reached Indira Col and named it after goddess Lakshmi, not our Mrs. Indira Gandhi. It was believed. And this goddess Lakshmi, she must have studied well to sort of call it Indira. And then after 1912, the glacier was almost lost in oblivion. Nobody bothered to come because First World War and then later on Second World War all intervened. And for about 30, 40 years, nothing much happened in the glacier till in 1947, India and Pakistan had their war down below in Kashmir. And there were some activities here. But the major activity started coming in 1971 during India-Bangladesh war. And in a very perfectly army sense, General Manekshaw ordered first the troops to move in the Karakorams along the Shyok, so that the Pakistanis were completely confused that what we are trying to do was in Bangladesh or in Karakorams and taking over Kashmir. And once they started moving towards Karakorams, of course, Indian Army and Air Force went into Bangladesh and it was liberated. And among all this activity, one person played a leading part was Colonel Rinchin, senior in the picture. And it fought in 1947 also. I mean, as a very, very young boy and saved almost Ladakh for India. And in 71 war, he fought bravely in the Karakorams and went quite ahead in the Shyok Valley, going up to different places like Chalunka and other places. And he was, of course, the person to get Mahavir Chakra twice in his life, which is also a very unique honor for him. And as the war ended, he retired from army and lived till his last in Leh. Now, after the war ended in 71, as we know, India had almost 80,000 Pakistani soldiers as our prisoners. And they were kept in Bareilly and different places. And Janab Bhutto and his wife daughter Benazir, they came down to Delhi to sign the famous Shimla Agreement. Now it is written that time secretaries who were present, Mr. D.P. Dhar has written about it, that they advised Mrs. Gandhi that just now Pakistan is down, Janab Bhutto has got nothing to do and we are having a lot of this thing. So ask them to sign an agreement completely making the Kashmir border as an international line and even Siachen Glacier to go ahead. But Bhutto was always a very wily customer. And he said, look, if I do this, you will force me to do this, then minute I go back to Pakistan, I'll be dethroned. I am the only civilian prime minister in the last 16 years. And army will throw me out, they will throw out the Shimla agreement and our all efforts would be lost. So he said, "Aap mujh pe bharosa kijiye. We agree to do this at a later date." And so Mrs. Gandhi said, all right, I will not force him to sign the Siachen Glacier to us. And just before signing, she asked, we agree to do this at a later date. And Bhutto said in chest Urdu, "Aap mujh pe bharosa kijiye." And the Shimla agreement was signed. And it was the line was drawn from this whole little worm going up, but it ending at NJ 984 to the grid point, because nobody knew what was behind it, and everybody was thought this barren area is not important to be just now mentioning it. So the Shimla agreement states the line shall follow thence north to the glacier. But it was not mentioned which glacier, whether Baltoro Glacier, which is Pakistan would believe, or the Siachen Glacier as India would want it. So that became the genesis of the current day problem, that everything was stopped at NJ 9842. This is the map where it was at 9J and both had signed it, and all matter was ended. But then the Bhutto's Bharosa was a very short-lived. He went to United Nations and gave his famous speech of making a 1,000-year jihad against India, but not to give an inch of Kashmir. And after Bhutto's history moved on, and during 1978, Pakistan started sponsoring expeditions from their territory. And here you see going across the Bilafundla, which Dr. Longstaff had reached, and enter the glacier and climb different peaks. And more than 18 peaks were climbed like this over 18 years. And that was kind of making a de facto announcement that area belongs to Pakistan, and Japanese, Germans, British, all were coming from Pakistan to climb these peaks. And we are under control of this whole area. In fact, frankly, we as a mountaineers always wondered that there were articles published about these climbs. There were journals there. There were a lot of material available in print, including we published in the Himalayan Journal of Japanese coming and climbing on the Siachen Glacier. But Indian authorities doesn't seem to have taken any notice of it. And there was no really action except sending 2 patrols, which came and just looked around while these were here, but no protests were even made. And as the Japanese and Pakistanis would, come onto the glacier, there you see behind is the Teram Kangri peaks, and these peaks are also climbed by the Japanese. But here it is to be noted that every summit that they climb, as I said, more than 18 summits, Pakistani flag was unfurled on the top with the Japanese flag, and this also kind of describes the limit of the area of control under Pakistan, unfortunately. And these are the 2 patrols which came from India. They were just looking around, taking pictures. And one expedition also came led by Colonel Narendra Kumar, who was kind of a hero for Siachen, for India. And there they climb small peaks, and you see all this Indira Col and different peaks, Sia Kangri and Saltoro Kangri and different peaks. Then Pakistan in the 1980s have a map which was published from, let's say, USA, and they had extended this line NJ 984 to straight to join Karakoram Pass. And they made this claim of this. And though actually the line was this along the Saltoro Ridge, which is known as the actual ground position line. And this line was objected to definitely by Indian authorities, and that gave a complete, let's say, idea to us of the intention of Pakistan that was trying to build something here. And in fact, when the Indian patrols went into Siachen Glacier, Pakistan sent the message that we don't know why your forces are entering into Pakistan area beyond our claim line, and we asked them to show complete restraint and withdraw. And getting more adventurous by, let's say, Indian silence, they gave an permission to a Japanese expedition, a huge Japanese expedition, to cross Bilafondla on the western ridge, cross Siachen Glacier, and go right into the area on the border with China and climb peaks called Remo. Remo, one sort of colored mountain. And this, if at all have gone through, would have led them down absolutely in eyeball to eyeball with Chinese, which is the Chinese territory, and as a present genesis, very near to Galwan Valley, just about 2 small valleys in the shore. And with this little adventure of Pakistan and others with others, Indian Army had to act. So on 13th of April, on a Baisakhi day in 1984, that Indian Army landed onto the glacier, and the Glacier War began. It was a very fierce war right to begin with, and everything was very haywire that time. Indian were controlling it just out of tents, and soon things were starting building up. Mrs. Gandhi, just after start of the war, visited the glacier and looked around. And of course, this was in April, and October she was assassinated. And the war took another turn, and almost was more and more left to the army. Now, as Pakistan had sponsored so many expeditions, we proposed to Government of India that from Indian side also we should send expeditions, and foreigners would be willing to come. And this will be kind of a counter to Pakistan, almost a kind of a thumbs up. That look, they would come anywhere you have. Now we are controlling the glacier, and they will come from here. And this would announce to the world also that Indians are onto the glacier, and they are controlling this glacier completely. So that was approved by Government of India and passed. And the first expedition came in 1985. That is led by myself with Dave Wilkinson, you see on the extreme left of the picture, and 2 of our Indian members. And we had selected peak Remo because that was the peak by when Japanese were going there. and the Indian Army prevented them. So that was another kind of, let's say, an answer to Pakistan that we can also climb our own peaks. We had the liaison officer, a lot of preparations are made, and things were absolutely haywire. And as I mentioned, a lot of actions are happening up, and there were very bare minimum tents and supplies available. So we had to prepare very well. And with all the preparations, we reached the glacier. There was a lot of problem crossing the base camp because they would not like the British to go through the base camp with their eyes open and cameras flickering. So ultimately, we Indians and Ladakhi porters, we sort of transported everything by our human going across. And one day, the close truck came, put the British inside, and they just dropped them off onto the glacier, and they just sort of climbed up. Those were the very ticklish days, and one was not sure of technology for satellites and everything. So army was taking all possible precautions. Now the glacier itself was quite a horrible place, I would say, or a unique place if you see the mountaineers, because on the right side you see all the spires, which today would be very much attractive for mountaineers to climb. And inside the Terong glaciers were quite flat, as many Karakoram glaciers are, and we reached the head of the glacier to this twin peaks of Remo. Left hand side is Remo 3, which we made an ascent and climbed. While right hand side on Remo, our team reached, Britishers particularly reached very high till here, within 300 feet of the summit. And while trying to dig a tent platform, one of our members, Stephen Venables, a leading mountaineer, did not tie his rucksack to the ice axe. And as a result, because of the movement, the rucksack fell down on the other side, taking his everything inside. So his crampon and ice axe and everything were gone, and there was no way they could continue going to the summit. And in fact, the whole rescue coming down itself became a very horrible effort, and he was just saved because his companion Victor Saunders was really a brilliant mountaineer and a guide. But this fall of rucksack, in a way, played a part in the history of India-Pakistan, because it was announced on the London newspapers that the Indian British mountaineer falls in a mountain and his rucksack rolls down and is just saved, luckily. And that come from India, that was announced. And now that the world knew officially that it was the Indians who was controlling the Siachen Glacier. From there, the summit, we saw this again, Teram Shehar Ice Plateau. And on the second part of our expedition, we went to the South Terong Glacier and reached a call called Teram Call, a very easy call. And as you could see from behind, is the Shoyak Valley, and opposite here is the Galwan. So one does not know what will be the ultimately technology or world development, but with such a terrains available, maybe it would become a very dangerous point to allow anything to happen on the Shoyak Valley, even from Galwan. On the way back, our river was in spate, so we had a very great difficult time to come across. And in 1989, when we came, one as to mountaineering, apart from mountaineering and climbing, which I showed you, we had to face many other difficulties regarding permissions, for which government of India had to spend several papers to start with. And in Kashmir, we had to pass through, and it was then full of, militancy. In fact, in 1989, when we first time came here, it was absolutely and full of militancy, and we had to just rush through. And as we reached Leh, things were also bad, and there was a big firing in Leh, and we were stuck for 5-7 days, almost doing nothing. But then that sort of a thing happens, and some army generals would help you if they think that it's a big organization and we should help mountaineers. Well, some would tell us on our face that, look, government has given you permission, do what you like, and don't bother us. So one has to be ready to face everything possible. So in 1996, but then the ultimate, it happened that we came here with all permissions and clearance, and we camped outside the Siachen base camp. And we did not know why. And we did not know why Army was a bit unfriendly to us. And then ultimately it appeared that though we had everything done, and the local brigade commander, General Ranjir Singh, was also very cooperative. And he says there is no security risk. But some general of the staff officer in Northern Command had become adamant. No, we will not allow this expedition. And possibly, as you are coming to later on, he had something scores to settle with the brigade and not to us. And that's why he sort of stayed firm and he said, no, you cannot go. General Ranjit sort of pushed up inside to the Tarong Valley as a fait accompli that he could be allowed, but it did not happen. And ultimately, we had to go back as we came and informed us. In fact, he was good enough to us to give a party and kind of make us see. And then I still remember the day when he shook hands. We were going. Harish bhai, I'm very sorry what the army has done to you. There is no fault of you, and it is just an internal squabbling. We were also very upset, angry, went back to Leh. And the only anger was that our own army had done this to us, which has always stood with us and always been good to us just because one general had in the Northern Command had a very different ideas. So I wrote a booklet which shows everything was, not hunky-dory for us. And many times we have been had to behave like this also. And whether it is a democratic army or is this democracy, because the government of India had given us everything, but we were stopped without any reason. And we went back, and except invoking the political establishment, which was not up to good that time, we went and lectured everywhere over this misdeed. In fact, I was traveling to Europe, and then I spoke in Geneva to a little small panel of United Nations also, saying about this episode. But then Lieutenant General Padmanabhan took over at the Udhampur very quickly after this episode. But still we allowed 2 years, and ultimately I sent an application in 1998 to complete the task what we are left to go to the Siachen Glacier head. And we were wondering whether they would allow us or not. And it is General Padmanabhan whom I met later at Pune when he was commanding the Southern Army, Southern Command. And he told us that, look, when your application came, there was discussions. And that offending general had gone, of course. But then there was some people who said, look, Mr. Kapadia has criticized the army and even he spoken abroad and is written. So should we allow him? So General Saab said, I looked at all the different, sort of talked to them about different aspects and then said, all right, I got 3 questions. Did we do wrong to Mr. Kapadia or not by denying him going? The answer was obvious, yes, it was quite a wrong thing. Then the citizens whom we are wrong have a right to complain or not? Okay, yes, they have a right to complain. And are we a dictatorial army or a democratic army? The government of India wants to send somebody and we have no other reasons to stop them, we should let them. So yes. And so we started getting telephone calls from Northern Command. When are you coming? And we'll give you this facilities and everything. And with such democratic credentials, when General Padmanabhan took over as Chief of India's Army, our complete faith in the Indian Army and democracy was fully restored. And it was a very happy ending ultimately. Now, this is the Siachen Glacier. As you see, the central glacier, goes to the top, and there are the different peaks nearby, but which is more of interest to mountaineers. Now, the glacier itself at the beginning point is big rubble, vast glacier, 76 kilometers long. And if you walk, it is 98 kilometers. And again, as I narrated, there are roses everywhere. And the army is being trained. They are great soldiers, but for a mountaineering, they had to be trained. The Siachen Battle School, it gives them a training for 3 weeks. And there are, of course, very proud slogans written, no enemy can dare when Jammu Kashmir Light Infantry is here. But behind that, they have to pay a price. There are memorial walls, 1 during 1985 and 6 when I returned in 2002. So there are commands made through which the people go, and this becomes a very little touchy moment because they know all of them will not walk back safely through this command. So as a result, the religion and the faith plays a lot part. There is a little temple built or next to his church and even an Idgah wall about nearby. But apart from the war, once you go onto the glacier, it is commanding and beautiful glacier. You can walk. Army's road is there, and trekking route is there, and there are lovely little rivulets which is coming in, and climbs peaks when the war is over. All these peaks will attract hundreds of climbers. It will become one of the most major climbing area in the world. And the glacier meanders its way through, all throughout this. But it shows its teeth also. There are crevasses where one has to be careful, and very steep, sort of icy tops to be crossed, where if you fall, it will be a serious problem. And there are rivers to be crossed. Luckily, there were, kind of ladders put up there. And we have to do all this careful, or even sometimes jump across a crevasse, almost keeping our heart in mouth. And for army, it is another thing, because they have to, move so many people, not just 6 mountaineers like us. And the camps are sometimes very barren, sometimes, in a very peculiar shape and a very ramshackle. And here the kitchen is on the top of that ice, and one had to come down with a heavy stomach and very carefully. But Indian soldiers, as usual, our Jawans are the backbone of everything. Very happy, nice, looking after themselves, and nothing can stop them. And they welcome you, as you see, welcome to Camp 1. And they say, Tagda raho, sir. And of course, thanks to the Air Force, everything is stored, and every camp has got large storage, almost to last them entire winter or 6 to 8 months. And that everything is brought by Indian Air Force. This is very much part of this whole operation. And we have also some of our items carried by them. And of course, this makes a very romantic sight when the highest unclimbing in the world and an Indian helicopter flying across it. Whatever the helicopter brings, the army has to carry up to the top. And sometimes they put up a bit of, these wires, and otherwise soldiers carry their own stuff and go up to the thing. But of course, the job is to fight, but there are no bullet to bullet ever exchange. It is basically an artillery war. And that's why small artillery also operates on the top. Center of the glacier has got tremendously nice, beautiful high peaks. And as you go up from different camps, the glacier gets flatter and flatter. But of course, you have to be careful while crossing these crevasses. Now, the army has also created its own god, OP Baba, because the operation observation post for artillery, at once there was an Om Prakash, and he guided artillery in a very serious manner, and that led to a lot of saving of life. So OP Baba has been de facto god of this whole area, and army would really salute them. But you will see this OP Baba's temples here. But I would draw attention to the map, the flag behind, where the names of the offerings are written by National Singh, Muhammad Farooq, Abdul Hussain, and Shakil Ahmad, and Ahila Ram. Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, all in one. And many times it was trying to propaganda there's a war between Hindus and Muslims. It is not. The war is between two nations, India and Pakistan. And Indian Muslims are fighting shoulder to shoulder with our soldiers. And the soldiers, they say that a bullet does not look at our religion. So why should we? Then the Italian had come, and they are trapped here, and they were only just 4 of them, Miss Kalau and Professor Dainali. And this is the highest unclimbed peak in the world today on the right side, but it is right under the border between India and Pakistan. So just now it will be very difficult to venture. As Siachen Glacier flooded, Col Italia was crossed by our Italian friends and named it. And this is the whole Teramshire Glacier. They went to the top of it. Now, this is a peak named as Taviz Peak by Kulak workmen. But opposite it on the left side out of the picture is a peak which was conquered by Pakistan earlier called Qaid Peak, Qaid, after Muhammad Ali Jinnah. And a big fight took place, and Indian Army had to take control that peak. So in 1980s, 87, if I'm not mistaken, there was a big fight for this, and Indian Army fought, led by one Bana Singh, and is an artist depiction how they reached the summit in a hand-to-hand fight with a good, many people, many of our Indian soldiers lost. Ultimately, the post was captured, and it was named after Bana Singh, you see on the right, and greeting Prime Minister Rajiv. Now, this capturing of Bana post by India really encouraged Pakistani, and they attacked Bilafondla in a vigor in a year, and that was one of the biggest attack which was named by Indian Army as Operation Rajiv after not Prime Minister, but Lieutenant Rajiv Pandey, who also fought very bravely there. And the general in the center, you see, General Ramesh Kulkarni, he was organizing that fight, and he was completely in control of it. And this fight ultimately, biggest on Siachen, broke the back of Pakistan. And since then, the entire war little fizzled out. The army is using different types of gadgets. Here, the snow scooters taking luggage. And as we reach towards the north, it was different area. You can see, look down the glacier, and we neared to the Siachen Glacier. But then we are trapped in a little storm. We will stay in the bunker for a while, and there are higher peak. Finally, we reached Turkistan, whose foot young husband had reached many years before. And I reached Indira Col, which was a kind of a really water parting between Asia and South Asia. You could see this is the northern side, Urdog Glacier of young husband was driving. But then on the map, if you will see in the square, the water melting below my leg, south will go down to Arabian Sea, and to the north, it go down into Lake Kolbek, which is in the Chinese area. And it gets so cold that if you throw warm water into air during midwinters, it will freeze in icicles and will not come down so easily. We celebrated with a bit of campfire. Army and all Air Force old parachutes were lying, and Army makes a campfire out of it. And as we came down to the base camp and completion of our fifth trip to Siachen and end of our exploration, we of course said our salutes to OP Baba, and it was over. My son Nawang Kapadia was with me on the 1996 trip, and he was talking to lots of officers, almost of his age, and he got very excited to join the army. In fact, we had a cloth shop where he used to sit, and in the evening when I'll come, I did not like his face. He was very sullen and out. And he said, "This is an air-conditioned jail for me, and I want to do an adventure and roam around like you." But his chosen field was army. So he trained himself at the Officers Training Academy, and then he became one of the Gurkha officers in 4-3 Gurkha Rifles. But he was killed in action in few months. And this is a little memorial for him at Almoda, where there is a Gurkha station. Now, as we were coming down, there are discussions about what to do with this glacier, because the glacier, I would say, is destroyed beyond repair with all this firing and everything, and garbage. Almost it'll take a generation, if not more, to rejuvenate, even if we stop the war now. And this is the largest water body, and there are lots of shells and everything lying here onto the glacier. And all the human waste are packed into drums and rolled down into the glacier. And one does not know when they will open up and when they will completely pollute the whole item. To save a lot of environment, Army has established pipelines with the stations in between to pump up kerosene, which can be used, and that will save a lot of labor. And solar energy is being used, but these are very small minimum efforts which is being made. But the glaciers, in a major way, something needs to be done. Now, a picture of mine I love is Indian soldiers walking and marching onto the Siachen Glacier. But when you talk to younger officers, they say, "Sir, we are ready to fight for the country, give up our life, but we don't want our children and grandchildren sitting on this Saltoro ridge and still doing the same thing." So something must be done to solve this problem and war between India and Pakistan and save Siachen. So that made me an idea of sort of having proposed a peace park for the Siachen Glacier between India and Pakistan. And it is a very well-known idea, not mine, that there IUCN, there is an International Union for Conservation of Nature under United Nations, has proposals for a peace on borderline. When the two sides are unable to solve their conflict on the borderline, they agree to declare it as a peace park, withdraw the armies, and allow the nature to grow for many decades or century. And doing this, for any difficulties, the army world is ready to give technology and money to save this. But one of the main conditions is the both sides should agree. And our enemy neighbor is not agreeing at all to this. And that's why the whole matter is pending. And there are several peace parks around the world, as you will see, between India and Nepal and Tibet, and all over South Asia. But then we have nothing happening in the year in the Siachen Glacier. And we pressed it very high, proposed it everywhere, and government of India, army, everybody who should now know about it. But it is now into the realms of politics, which we are not sort of involved in. But to make one declaration that we mountaineers believe in the peace in Siachen, under United Nations and IUCN, in years before, we organized a joint climb with two Pakistani mountaineers, which is behind us, and myself in front, and another Indian climbers, to climb a small peak in the Monch, in the Alps, called the Monch. And on the summit of this Monch, we have to sort of, declare that India and Pakistan mountaineers, we feel that Siachen should be saved and there should be peace in Kashmir. But so many years of bombarding to us also that, is our enemy and we must be one up and this war should be won and everything. It doesn't go easily. So as we reach to the summit and unfurled our flags, my companion just nudged me and said, just raise our flag a little higher. So that sense of competition always remains. And until that is sort of, looked at, we will always be, if not fighting, quarreling, but doing the upmanship everywhere. But we hope that someday, this coldest war will stop. And it is Prime Minister, when he visited Siachen, he talks of peace in Siachen, and that was, he was in a way reflecting our peace park idea, luckily. But then, of course, nothing much happened. So these are the minimal efforts by the army and other things to clear garbages and everything, but lot remains to be done. And we hope someday this peace will be in the glacier and bring roses to grow. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And first, I request you to kindly stop
Yes.
sharing the screen, sir.
Here I am.
Mr. Harish Kapadia, that very, very engrossing talk. Very engrossing.
Thank you.
Mind you. Really, I mean, your knowledge is mind-blowing on this subject, on this area especially. And I'm sure all of us have really gained a lot of knowledge from your talk this morning, and all of us have really thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you.
So, with your permission, sir, I will now throw open the floor for the question and answer session. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions for Mr. Harish Kapadia, kindly please either put them in the chat box or kindly raise your hand, and then we'll have the questions one after the other. Yes, sir. Brigadier Sridharan, sir, has got a question for you, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm going back on the history of McMahon line coming on. The Siachen is even the McMahon line is supposed to be part of India, not because of 62 or anything. And it is just an artificial line where the McMahon went and it was made there. Is there any other view that because whichever book I read, they all quote this sort of a thing about Siachen and the line that is being drawn in China, in particular China and India, because at the time there was no Pakistan. That McMahon line is the thing, and Siachen is part of India because of that. Is it supposed to be on the other side of the line? You have any idea on that, sir?
Yes, McMahon line, sir, was discussed in Shimla in 1940, and it belongs mainly to the east. It started in sometime in in the north of Burma in India and followed Arunachal and towards Sikkim. It does not cross ultimately Nepal or and on this side, on the western side, there is no McMahon line. There is only one line was Durand line, which was between Pakistan and Afghanistan, but that also ends somewhere towards Siachen. So all we have is what is negotiated with India and Pakistan, AGPL, actual ground position line, or the ceasefire line. They keep on changing. McMahon line is mainly for the east.
No, what was
Tomorrow, then you want to bounce,
Pardon?
you go to
Hello?
the shop.
Sorry, sir, I could not hear you. What?
somebody else is talking, so I thought I could.
You carry on, sir.
Okay. No, what I'm saying, what was the way that was in McMahon line is basically an imaginary line, and extend it towards this. If you extend it like that, Siachen automatically comes into India. That is the sort of argument put even in the UN if you read the old papers and other things. Is there any other view on that? Of course, I know it doesn't get extended, and there's no Pakistan at the time, so there's nothing. It is only India and Afghanistan. I mean, imaginary line again, a borderline. Later on, it became Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Now, there are many views, but for every view, I mean, you would understand that Pakistan has to be involved. And for many, many years, there was almost no government in Pakistan whom to talk to, except the army. And now, of course, situation is so bad that they will not talk of an inch here and there. So it's almost becomes a very futile exercise. Until there is a proper government somewhere, like, in fact, say, so during when Ziaul Haq, one of the tyrant, was almost leading, there was almost we are reaching a settlement in Siachen in 1988. But then with his killing and now the present day, everything is gone. And General Musharraf also made it a point, because this Operation Rajiv, he fought at Bilafundla, was the brainchild of General Musharraf, and he was smart, he was completely beaten. And they say his Siachen consciousness as such always remained very wild. So that's why he planned Kargil to do a reverse Siachen on India, of course, where also he badly failed.
Right. Thank you, sir. Any questions from anyone else? Who's the next? General Raghavan, sir, any questions from you?
You're muted, sir.
You're muted, sir.
Okay, can I be heard now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Can I be heard now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Kapadia, I know you and you know me. You are a general there after Kulkarni.
Yes.
And conducted a number of operations. And I also wrote a book, which I'm sure you are well aware of, on Siachen.
It's a very good book, and we are completely always.
My salutations to you on the family's contribution to Indian defense through your son and whatnot. Mr. Kapadia has given us he has shown us the beauty, the stunning beauty, and the dreamland for mountaineers. It is a dreamland for mountaineers. But there's a big difference in having to stay there and fight and to do mountaineering, which is without meaning to belittle what mountaineers go with great preparations, climb a peak, spend some time and come back. Where the soldier has to stay there for months together at a height where a mountaineer only spends on the summit 20 minutes, raises his flag, takes a photograph and comes back. There's a vast difference. And why is therefore India doing it? There are geopolitical, geostrategic, and realpolitik reasons for it. Now, the peace spark idea, as Harish Sab said, has worked in some areas, and in some areas it will not work. As he himself says, with an adversary like Pakistan, it will not happen. Pakistan's position is, we are ready to talk. You vacate the area. You go back to where you were earlier, and we will come and reoccupy it. It's our area, and then we will talk peace. It's unacceptable to India. So with the result that the stalemate will continue. There have been a dozen or more rounds of talks with Pakistan. I was a member of many of those talks, and those talks lead to nothing and will not lead to anything. And any prime minister who tries to find a solution on his own will lose his government in India. Unless a prime minister has the whole parliament supporting a proposal. As he said during Zia's time and Musharraf's time, we nearly came to a solution. I was part of those negotiations. Mr. Narasimha Rao was the prime minister. He was very careful. He made sure that Mr. Vajpayee and his party were willing to back him Today, no prime minister can do that. No prime minister can unilaterally say we will withdraw. Unless the entire parliament and opposition supports him, his government will go in no time at all. So the difficulties of real politics and geopolitics are such that a solution is not possible on the lines of a peace park or any other. But that does not mean that the role or the service provided by people like Mr. Kapadia cannot be admired or appreciated. And we must salute that effort. These people are very unique people who spend their savings is the mountaineering grapevine which told us that they are up to some mischief. And then we sent Bul Kumar and others and preempted all that. So we owe a great deal to people like Kapadia. But the idealistic notions of peace in that area are really not realistic. Thank you, Mr. Kapadia.
Sir, I fully agree with you. And let me tell you, sir, put it on record, I really admire your book. It's very well written, and you have done a yeoman service to the world of literature even by putting your book there. Very nice. And I completely salutes to Army because we go, visit, and come back in summer while you stay there in winter. So it is an absolutely super effort to the Army. Salutes to you, sir.
Well, let me, one last line, which is that the Indian forces could not stay and cannot stay in Siachen without a major role of the Indian Air Force.
Yes, sir.
I'll be the first to say that we cannot stay there for 1 week without a magnificent role performed by the Air Force. In fact, the Indian Air Force has pushed the envelope of flying in extreme high altitude, dropping supplies precisely, landing troops precisely. In fact, it was the Air Force which took the guns there. We broke up the guns. Air Force went and para-dropped them, and then we reassembled the guns. You only see the photos of those guns. You don't know what went behind taking those guns there, and it couldn't be done without the Air Force. So I just want to finally say that it's an Army air operation. The Army on its own couldn't have done it. Thank you.
That's wonderful, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Any other questions, please?
There is one by Mrs. Pramila Rajan. It's there in the chat box.
1 minute, sir. I'll just check it out. Yes, sir. There's one question for you from Mrs. Pramila Rajan. She wants to know as to what are your attempts or plans for perpetuating the memory of your son, the conservation inputs you had mentioned. She wants to know a little bit more about this.
Now, as I said, this peace park and all conservation is now in the hands of government. It's nothing we can do about it because both governments are talking, and Pakistan is really not a government to talk to. So my son Sonam Kapadia is running a website called nawang.com, and he's got everything memory about lot about Army, and now we should add about Air Force also, and a lot about his life and everything. And through that, we are propagating what is happening in Kashmir, what is been going on. So there are small movies of his life and everything. So that is hoping, and what Army is doing there. And because of his effort and sacrifice, we are in touch with his unit and many other young Army soldiers. And if there is any difficulties, problems, there are many civilians who are injured. We are so and so, and we keep on looking after them. So that is what we can do, sort of perpetuate his memory on website, because nowadays that is the way to go.
There's a question, Rinko Arun Kumar. You wish to ask a question? Rinko Arun Kumar, I saw a one raised hand from your side. Fine, no problem. What sir? It's now, I think, we're finished with the questions. So it's back to you, sir.
Sir, just one small question. Has any one of you been to the Siachen? Any of our listeners today? Ah, wonderful, sir.
Colonel Krishnaswamy, Wing Commander Harshavardhan, of course, General Raghavan.
Yes, of
And,
course.
And General Manvalan. Yes.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
Brigadier Subramaniam.
Yes.
There are many. And I'm sure there is General Rajavelu here. Yes.
Yeah, okay, sir. Thank you.
Shall I ask?
Yes, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Kapadia. It's an
Yes.
excellent eye-opener for people like me who've never even thought of Siachen in these
Thank you.
aspects. And to know that beauty is also there in such a desert, high desert like that, like in the
Yes.
form of roses. And my question is, like, when you're all up there, like I know the soldiers get frostbite and depression and things like that. Do the mountaineers have time to get these kind of medical problems, both mentally and physically? And how do you evacuate them? Do you have to do your own this thing, or does the army do it for you? Or?
Evacuation in Himalaya is only one thing is Air Force can do it for us. I mean, otherwise there is no way. Physically carrying down it's become very difficult. The army is always very helpful, and Air Force, of course, excels themselves. I can tell you, how they just landed with one ski on a high mountain slope and rescued. But about mountaineers, there is also, of course, a lot of psychological problems. We are sort of going, but that's why you go with a very group known to you. Say, if a person and friend say hi, and you just gave him a slap, it will all be both will laugh. But in high altitude, that could become a serious fighting. Why did you touch me? Why did you beat me up? So that's why basically we go with friends, and sometime in a storm you are trapped in something. You keep on talking, chatting, passing time. But psychological is difficult, but we don't stay as long as General Raghavan said. It's the army. They have to really suffer. In fact, sometimes we saw soldiers after, Siachen, they're coming down and we meet them on the way and, oh my God, what they have suffered through. I mean, 6-8 months, they are completely, completely gone. And in fact, says Siachen is a result, you ask somebody, how many days you are on the Siachen, you come. He will never say how many days he is there. He'll just say how many days left. And Abhi said 76 days left. So he's just wanting to get out from there. He's always counting in the reverse. It's a really hats off to them. I mean, we come here, talk, show pictures and everything, but then it is really the Air Force and Army which is really ruling the show, and their sacrifice is enormous.
And I also appreciate your thought of a Siachen Park, but like General Raghavan said, when we had the upper hand and we couldn't call the cards because we were naive enough to believe the Prime Minister of Pakistan. And now, like General Raghavan said, that they want to reoccupy and then talk. I wonder if your dream will ever come true of having a peace park in Siachen. It might be detrimental to all the security, and the sacrifices of all our young warriors might go to a waste if we trust them again, actually. And I will be, as a citizen, as a civilian, I will be very wary of trusting them again. And it might create anger in me to know that my children, the children of this country have sacrificed their lives to save something, and we give it away to an enemy who couldn't be trusted.
That's very true, and that's why it looks like very difficult. And if it happens, it has to be very, very carefully done, because withdrawal is out of question. Indian Army withdrawing and handing it over to Pakistan, it is just out of the question, as General Raghavan would say. And then, but then the actual Indian is insisting that that whatever the ceasefire and the actual ground position line, that should be recognized with the pillars and marking, and that should become the dividing line. We are not handing over to Siachen, but kind of both sides stop fighting because there is too much bloodshed already on Siachen. And many, philosophers, they say that the night is darkest before the dawn. So maybe these are the worst period, and maybe someday some hope will come.
Yes.
Oh, Lord will part with this.
Any more questions? Right. Thank you, Mr. Harish Kapadia. Unbelievable. I'm a fighter pilot, and I see the whole earth looking so beautiful down. I really don't realize the bloodshed and the hardship and the courage that is required to dominate such glaciers and such inhospitable areas. You took us through a beautiful journey, and for us, at least for me, it is completely, unbelievable. And I could visualize what you have gone through, the adventure in which you went, and the determination you went and trekked in all those places. And of course, our warriors. What our Indian soldier has done is unbelievable.
And pilots.
Yeah, and yes, I'll have to put the pilot last. I happen to be one. And like General Raghavan brought out, it's a joint operation.
Yes.
But I particularly looked at one sentence that you mentioned when you're returning from your trek and you meet the soldiers, the young soldiers who are going up, and the young soldier tells you that it's okay, I will give my life for the country, I will fight. But what about my children, my grandchildren? What will happen to this glacier? What are we going to pass down to the generations that come after us? Perhaps we would have destroyed it. Well, it is not in our hand, and it is our job to protect our motherland, and we will do it, whatever happens. I was just thinking, because we always, as pilots, look from the air. Perhaps in the future, there will be enough technology to monitor violations of borders from up above, not even satellites, anything much lower than that, and give early enough warning of any kind of incursions. And maybe if both of us agree to that, and we say that we keep 50 kilometers away or whatever it is, I don't know, and we draw an imaginary line and it is monitored from up above, maybe maybe there will be peace, and we don't have to man those inhospitable posts for generations to come.
Oh, hopefully your wish comes true, because that is the solution, because today also there is ceasefire for 20 years, but that people are sitting on the top.
Yes.
And the major injuries are coming because of altitudes and storms and everything.
Absolutely.
So we hope, your wish comes, and technologies, I will feel, is the way forward. Not physical withdrawal maybe, but then, looking an eye on them and us, if they come, we know how to get in. So that also sort of a thing. I don't know how technology will develop, but I'm sure something would come. But then permanent question is the neighbors.
Yes, absolutely.
Nobody to talk to. That is the main thing.
The recent, all of us have been reading about the conflict, the war, mini war between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and how beautifully the drones dictated the course of the war. And the drones, with the kind of cameras on board the drones, you can literally see identify a person from another person. It is as good as, that's the kind of cameras that go around, and the drones were capable of any violation or any movement. They identified it, they finished that target in a moment. So it is definitely a possibility in the future. And of course, the drone has to fly above 20,000 feet, which is not easy. So all those things will happen. But the journey you took us through this morning was unbelievable.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you very much, because we didn't know, many of us didn't know, except many of our army officers who have literally lived on that glacier. And I also thank General Raghavan to bring his perspective, which actually brought us to the level field.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kapadia. We, on behalf of all of us here, we wish you many more adventures, and many more happy trekkings. And perhaps in one of your treks, we are in your category. We'll join you in your treks in the future. You could consider us. And in case you do plan to trek down south, then we are all here. And you will have one troop following you for your adventures down south. And the Western Ghats, which we have trekked, are very beautiful places to trek. I thank you. I wish you the very best. And on behalf of the Armed Forces Veteran Officers Association of Chennai, thank you and for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
God bless. Jai Hind.
Yeah, and sir, my regards to all of you, particularly General Raghavan. He's a very elderly person who we have heard a lot about him. So I'm glad to meet through your offices today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Kapadia, can you make me the host? This is Ravi Shankar before leaving. If you can kindly.
I don't know how you are. I mean, I don't know how to make it. You have to ask General Harshvardhan. We got it.
Yeah, you can.
I can see you clearly.
I can see you full screen just now.
Yeah. Any one of us, Harshvardhan or myself, that is Ravi Shankar or Harshvardhan.
Yeah, Harsh, Ravi, we can see you. Please go ahead. Go ahead. Ravi, please go ahead.
You speak, then automatically you come in center.
No, we just requested you to make one of us the host, Mr. Kapadia.
Can you make
Either
Ravi Shankar or me as
Harshvardhan.
the co-host? I'm the host.
Ravi, why do you want it?
Sir, if Mr. Kapadia leaves, then the meeting ends for us, sir. That's the reason why.
Oh, yes.
Be the host.
We'll disappear along with him.
Yes, sir.
Not
That's
to
the
worry.
reason why, sir.
Not to worry. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure you enjoyed the journey as well. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kapadia.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And thank you, Sheila.
Thank you, sir.